Visibility drives communication. Communication drives trust. And trust drives loyalty.
Stop hurling emails and start getting face-to-face with your people and talking them through things. It's going to feel weird if you haven't done it before.
Yes.
And your people will think it's weird if you haven't done it before. But that goes away.
One size does not fit all. You got to get creative and say, well, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, try something else. Get creative, because you're going to find a solution that works for your environment.
Yeah.
Hey there, I'm Jeff Cordes, and welcome to the C.R.A.P Leadership Podcast. My philosophy is about C.R.A.P: caring, respect, appreciation, and praise.
And this is Randy Walensky. Been a speaker, trainer, sales professional, and coach for over 10 years, using all of Jeff's C.R.A.P. And we want to bring these principles to you in your organization. Let's jump in. All right, today we are talking about visibility and how important that is in the modern workplace. That means the leaders got to get out there, show some face time with all different levels of the organization, because your employees are dying for you as a leader to show up more often.
Oh, it's huge. And I learned it very early on in my career. Worked for a phenomenal general manager, and he always told me visibility drives communication. Communication drives trust, and trust drives loyalty. People don't quit people they're loyal to. They quit nameless, faceless organizations. And I always remembered that. And so as I went to subsequent jobs, I made it a point to be visible. Hugely important. I mean, and it's particularly crucial when you've got like a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. When you've got multiple geographic regions. When you've got people working remote. It just depends on the situation. It's fascinating because, we've kind of become a little bit fixated on the remote thing, but only about 17% of the people out there now, based on studies I've seen, are either working either fully remote or partially remote. So we've gone back to that traditional way of working more so. Well, again, you've got a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. You got to make it a point to be out there. I mean, that would be my first takeaway. I would tell you, visibility drives communication, communication drives trust, and trust drives loyalty. And I made it a point. One of my jobs during my career is I had 3 locations spread throughout the country. I worked at a home base, meaning an office home base. But then week 2, I would go to one location. Week 3, I would go to another location, and then I'd work while I'm there, but I'd spent the week there. Then I'd be in the office the 4th week and the 1st week, and then I'd be on the road. And people got used to that pattern. So if they had questions that weren't urgent, when I would show up at this facility, they knew I was coming, and as a result, they were ready. They talked to me, and it worked very, very effectively. Again, this is my way of being visible because of the constraints that I had with multiple locations.
Well, I think like what you're saying, it's very easy for people to see an obstacle like that, to see multiple locations over multiple days and just never put it on the calendar, to never make it happen. And even if you're not intending it, if you do that, leaders start to be viewed like they're in an ivory tower. Oh, they wouldn't come down here with us working folk, with us who's actually doing the work. They want to stay off somewhere, looking at us from on high and judging us.
Tower.
That's why you need to be in person. That's why you need to go. And it should be getting easier. Like you said, less people working remote, which means visibility should be getting easier. But I think what's happening a lot of times is people are reprioritizing. Maybe they have more work than ever before, and they're doing all of those things. They're missing out on the visibility with the people who are actually doing the job.
Right. It's frankly, it's easier to, I could have parked my butt in the office and never showed up. But that wasn't my job. My job was to be out there, build relationships, get to know people, make sure that they're more engaged, all those sorts of things. And wasn't necessarily fun getting on a plane 2 weeks a month and going to Oklahoma and going to Texas. No, it wasn't. But that was part of the job. And I always remember, again, I'll say it again, first takeaway, Visibility drives communication. Communication drives trust, and trust drives loyalty.
That's so good, people. That's a writer downer, Jeff. If you
Yeah,
aren't
that is a
writing
writer
things
downer.
down, get that one in your notes, because each piece of it is a key component to being an effective leader, and you ultimately get
Yeah.
loyalty, which is going to make your life as a leader so much easier. So write that one down, break it apart as you need, but start with visibility for that one. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the other thing is oftentimes people are confused as to where to start. They
Mm.
don't know where to start. Well, my simple advice to people is put it on the calendar. If you're fortunate enough to have one location, I don't care if it's a cube factory with software coders or it's a manufacturing facility, uh, it doesn't matter. You got one location, twice a day. You should be out there morning and afternoon. You
Mm.
want to find out how people are doing in the morning. You want to find out how people are doing in the afternoon. How their day go? That's the sort of thing that builds relationships. Because you go up to somebody who's getting ready to wrap up and they say, "Oh man, it was a miserable day." And I said, "Well, talk to me." You know, pretty simple stuff. I mean, but the key is you got to put it on the calendar, because if
Mm-hmm.
you don't put it on the calendar, you are not going to do it. It's easier to say, "Oh, I got more work today." No, but if you got a list on your calendar that you're going on at 3 o'clock and you're going to walk and talk to the people that are the software engineers in this particular area, get out, do it. I mean, the other thing I want to emphasize is people love seeing senior leadership. And senior leadership is oftentimes uncomfortable doing that. So, what I used to do as an HR leader, I would walk with senior leadership, either the president, the general manager, plant manager, whoever it was, and we'd walk together.
Mm.
And the advantage then was between what they knew and what I knew, we could generally answer almost any question someone would have. So it really quelched a lot of rumors.
Mm.
And people saw us as real.
Mm.
We got to get to know them, and we were real. We weren't some people, as you said, sitting in the ivory tower.
Mm.
We weren't the suits, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that wasn't us. We weren't suits.
That's so the thing you also said inside of there is like we would squash rumors. Such an important aspect of being out and being visible, as
Yep.
that once people are comfortable with you doing that and that seems normal and natural, they'll open up to you and maybe they'll tell you, "Oh, I'm worried about this. I heard this. This has been oh, that's absolutely not true. We are not going that direction. There's nothing to
Playing
worry
down.
about. Whatever happens, you got to shut that the grapevine down. You got to shut down
Yeah.
the rumor mill."
Yeah, because if you shut down the grapevine, that's how you know your communications processes are working well. If you shut down the grapevine, you will be so far ahead. It is unbelievable. So, I mean, that kind of leads to what I would call my second takeaway. You got to get out of your office and talk to your people. Get
Mm.
out of the office, talk to your people. That's paramount.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's a simple. It's however you decide to do that. Especially, let's say, getting out of your office is staying in your office, but it's getting out of your computer, your work, your spreadsheet, and getting into someone else's Zoom call and saying, "Hey, how's it going?" Or scheduling, right back to the scheduling a meeting with the whole team and having that FaceTime. You have to be available. You have to be present. I was just talking with a leader recently, and he said that he gets all of the questions. He gets all of the information from the team, because one of the leaders has made it very clear that he's always too busy, that he's overwhelmed, and he's created this. Well, oh, I know so and so is so busy and so unavailable, so I'm coming to you. That's a bad communication, right? That's like now you start
Create
to
that
lose
impression.
out on more communication. They don't even think to go to you because they know you're already overwhelmed with what you have. Well, I'm not going to burden him with this little thing, but then those little things can add up and create problems. So you don't want to communicate that you're so busy you don't have time for people. You want to say, "I do have time for you." And I show that by making myself available, even for potentially silly things that could just be the cocktail hour or coffee, or let's have lunch together today. Do those in office, do those remotely, but make time so that people feel comfortable coming up to you. And I remember this is something you taught me as well, Jeff, just to reduce your retention, is you should never
I mean,
have
reduce your turnover.
Reduce your turnover. Thank you. You should you don't want to reduce your retention. That
You
you're
want to
going in
reduce
the
your
wrong
retention,
direction.
yeah.
But to reduce your turnover, what you want to do is be in front of your people enough that they feel comfortable telling you when little things are going on, or if they're thinking about quitting or anything. You'd be surprised that they will share that with you if they're
You
comfortable,
will.
and you can cut that off at the head and not lose somebody versus they don't come to you. I think your example, you have to tell it for people because I think it's a good example. It's the same as if you had kids. If you keep
Yeah.
shutting them down and not being available, eventually they stop coming to you. Hopefully I didn't ruin it, but yeah, tell that part because I think people can
You're
relate to
exactly right, Randy. I mean, because you blow somebody off once, they might come back. You blow somebody off a second time, not so much. You blow somebody off 3 times and say, hey, look, they're going to say, Jeff doesn't give a rip about me, won't take the time. Why should I give a rip about Jeff and the organization?
that.
That's how they connect the dots. And that gets very, very dangerous.
100%. Yes. So one other thing I wanted to share on this topic too, Jeff, of the getting out of your office and talking to your people. People might be like, oh my goodness, Randy and Jeff, you guys are giving that's obvious. Maybe somebody's thinking that. It's not so obvious to a young leader or to new people how important that is. They might go, oh yeah, that's probably important. That makes sense. But are you doing it? So I'll give you a short example. When I was a young leader, didn't have any idea what I was doing. Maybe some of you can relate to this. You just happen to be really good at your job. So somebody thinks you're qualified to lead a team doing all the things that are exactly opposite of what you were good at. Now you have to lead people, motivate people, coach people, hold people accountable. Nothing that had to do with your other job. Maybe some of you have been there. So I was there and I didn't know how the best way to get things. I'd get my marching orders from someone. I'd put them together and I'd hurl them to the team. And one of the ways I would do that was incredibly ineffective. So I'd spend 20, 30 minutes writing an email about this new stuff that's going on. And I want you to change this about logging information and start having these and ask these questions. Oh, beautiful email, and just hurl it into the cubicles where everybody was working. And it would be like 10 minutes. I'd hear like this murmur of like, what is this? This is so stupid. I don't know. It'd be all this stuff. And then nobody would follow what I asked. It was
But it was
extremely
one-way
frustrating.
communication.
I'm like, why? Why won't they do what I'm asking them to do? I made it crystal clear how it happened. And so I happen to be explaining this to you about how my people were just
I
frustrated
remember that
to
day.
no end. What's that?
I remember that day.
Yeah. They're just frustrating me to no end. We're sitting there talking about it, and you're hearing how I'm handling people. And to you, it was obvious. And you told me to do?
Get out of your office, talk to your people. Yeah, matter of fact, I think we were sitting on the back porch, if I recall correctly, and we're drinking vodka tonics.
That's where we do our best work.
Third vodka tonic. We started brainstorming, and you told me this story, and I said, Randy, just get out of your office and talk to your people, because that way, if you roll something out and they don't like it, you're going to be able to sense it. And then you can say if you're doing it like a group meeting, you say, come on, talk to me. I get the sense that something's bothering you folks. Talk to me.
Right.
That was a line I always used all the time. Come on, talk to me. I sense something's wrong. And then you could problem solve. It was two-way. It was interactive. It wasn't just hurling emails.
Exactly. Stop hurling emails and start getting face to face with your people and talking them through things, because that's how I got adoption. When they could right away ask questions, when they could right away have pushback, when they could right away have objections that I could cover them instead of them sharing them with everybody else, getting them to think it was a bad idea. If they voiced it to me and I had an answer for it, everyone went, oh yeah, that makes sense. So just the adoption level of policies, procedures in new directions that we were going, it went up, who knows, 100 times better. It was ineffective to actually being effective. And all it was is putting some face time to tell people about these things versus just sending out my edicts from my tower on high of what to do differently from now on. So that was a huge help. And if you're not doing that, or you're having frustrations with your people, get out of your office, talk to your people, schedule time with them.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about when we were talking about this particular podcast is, at first it's going to seem weird getting out of your office if you haven't done that. But you got to force yourself. That's why I talk about putting it on the calendar. In one organization, I was a new HR leader, and we ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, rotating shifts, all this sort of thing. Well, I made it a point, I oftentimes would show up on Saturday night and I just wander around and people were in shock because my predecessor never did that.
Mm.
And, and, and that impressed them, and we talked and got to know each other. And so I regularly showed up on Saturday night for, an hour or two. And then one day, one guy said, hey, when are you going to show up next? And we looked at the shift schedule and I said, well, probably in another 2 weeks. He said, man, I'm going to, I'm going to make some of my ribs. He says, my ribs are famous. He said, and he says, we'll have a little thing with the department and, we'll eat barbecue. And I said, well, you want me to bring anything? And he said, well, whatever, whatever you want or whatever. So, I made my famous German potato salad. I don't know if it went with the barbecue. People loved it, but I brought something in. So I was part of the group. And we didn't talk about work stuff. We just talked. And so all of a sudden people are saying, you know what? This guy's real, and I used to get invited all the time because I wandered around so much, different departments and different organizations I work. I get invited to the potlucks. They'd say to the department manager, hey, you going to invite Jeff? Which was very cool.
Yeah. Well, it's
very cool.
It's like what we've been talking about. They have to go back and listen to get-togethers to see how important breaking bread with people and having food is with people. And then as far as the visibility and being seen as one of the people, especially when you're a leader, you don't want to be seen as somebody that's unattainable to talk to. You want to be seen as somebody that everybody can talk to, because everyone wants to work for somebody that doesn't feel all uppity about themselves and that they're above people. Right. So when you're out eating,
you don't want to look like a suit.
There you go.
I mean, that's the expression people use all the time. And
yes,
I took great pride in the fact that people never viewed me as a suit.
Yes. And as you said right at the beginning, it's going to feel weird if you haven't done it before. Yes. And your people will think it's weird if you haven't done it before. But that goes away. That's just everybody when you're doing something
way quicker than you think. And then they get to the point when they don't see you, they wonder if something's wrong. We haven't seen Jeff in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Anything going on? Yeah, I think they may be wondering if I got fired. Who knows? But it was just, again, right. It feels weird at first, but you got to force yourself to get out there. Because if you do, and I don't care if it's a virtual world or a physical plant or a construction site or a cube factory where you got people, developing software. I used to be like a gopher. I'd pop my head around the corner in somebody's cube and say, hey, Kevin, how's it going? And at first they jump and, but it's almost like I relieve the monotony for them. there they are, coding away. But and I do that. I go down the line and I talk to everybody, and they could hear me coming. So they were ready for me, and they had their questions ready. It was great, and every environment, there's a way to make it work.
Yeah. Well, and a little bit of the dovetail on this of people getting to see you regularly. If you're in a higher level leadership role and you only show up to deal with problems or big changes or rah, and they know it's one of those three things. And let's say you show up out of the blue, they might be like, oh my God, which one is it? Am I getting yelled at? Am I getting some rah speech? Am I getting this? They should not have their, puckered up. They shouldn't have their hair on their neck raising, hearing that you're coming in because they're fearing the worst because you only come in for problems. You should be integrated and part of it, and that you're talking with people all the time. So it's not just, there must be something bad or they're going to be changing something. And again, there starts the rumor mill. You start getting out there and seeing people regularly. Then when you do pull somebody aside one-on-one and talk to them, they're not afraid to death that, oh my gosh, here comes the hammer, here comes the axe. It's like, no, they just want to talk to me because they're a good leader. That's great, right?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you one example of a client of mine, and then we'll wrap up with the 3 takeaways. Is I done work with these folks on leadership training, and the HR director and the HR generalists, they said, yeah, we don't get out as much as we should. So
Mm.
they started walking around together. Well, they showed up in one department, and the person that's working at the desk was like scared to death. And she says, what are you guys doing here? She thought that she was getting fired.
Yeah.
And the HR director said to me, that indicated to me that I haven't been getting out there enough. So you don't want that sort of thing to develop. So, again, it's, you get out of your office, talk to your people. But the other thing I want to emphasize, I think probably the third point is you got to get creative. You got to be creative, because not one size does not fit all. You got to get creative and say, well, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, try something else. Get creative, because you're going to find a solution that works for your environment.
Yeah, it could be those big town hall meetings where you're addressing things. It's the after hour cocktails, it's lunches. It's what we talked about in our remote one, especially because that's the first place people lose visibility. It's easy to hide, but everyone can do it. You can lose visibility no matter what organization. You just get entrenched in your little world and your work, and you don't realize the people need to see you. So you got to do it a variety of ways. It can't just be, I only show up for the Monday meeting and everybody sees me once a week. Well, that's kind of sterile, right? And it's not the right environment for all the conversations. But when you're creative and you come at people at different times with different things, with food sometimes, with this at different times, then it opens up and generates different conversations. It makes people feel more comfortable. So you can't be a robot that just does whatever the boilerplate easiest stuff is to do, or what they make you do at a higher level. That happens with a lot of leaders. They just force you a certain level of visibility with your people, and that's all you're doing. Get creative. There's so many benefits for that. So yeah, let's bring it in for a landing, Jeff. What are the three things that people
bring it in for a landing, Randy? We want to tell people, hey, if you like what you see, subscribe.
Oh, there we go.
Make comments. Reach out to us if you got questions. Again, this is only a 20-minute podcast, but you got thoughts. We want to hear them. That's what makes us better. It makes it more informative for you, and that's our goal.
100%. So remember, visibility. You got to do the visibility one, Jeff, so I don't screw
visibility,
it up.
First takeaway, visibility drives communication. Communication drives trust, and trust drives loyalty. Then the next takeaway is get out of your office and talk to your people. And the third takeaway is get creative with your visibility. Try something. If it doesn't work, try something else. There is an answer. Trust me.
Boom. That's it.
Hey, remember, lead with C.R.A.P. Why? Because C.R.A.P. works.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good one.
Take care. See you next week.